I just wanted to check my emails. Instead, I found a live video of my wife, in our bedroom, with him. His wife was with another man, on camera, from their own home. The betrayal hit like a punch to the gut. But he didn't fall apart. He tore up their marriage certificate and made sure her affair partner would never forget what he did. I watched sporadic videos on YouTube on my laptop until around 10 o'clock at night. An autoplay queue of clips was arranged on the right side of the screen. I watched a video of Larry Big Al Johnson, one of my favorite basketball players. His clean, smooth, and net only last-second shot was captured in the video. As usual, his long blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail. He didn't look like a basketball player, he looked like a movie star. Big Al and I have been friends since college. He used to live in the same apartment building as me and was the team star back then. We encountered one another quite frequently, particularly in the off-season. The Wizards, the team closest to my home in Virginia, selected him in the draft when he turned pro. 3 years ago, he announced his NBA retirement. He currently hosts on Wiz TV. I occasionally viewed his videos, mostly for nostalgic reasons. The following video, however, was a news clip rather than a basketball-related one. It showed Big Al dancing intimately with a blonde woman at a Miami club. It was too familiar, too intimate. Then I had an epiphany that left me speechless. My wife was the blonde. It was a recently uploaded video. Big Al, another victory, read the headline. I hardly blinked as I watched the entire 3 minutes. In the end, my wife Lee and Big Al were seen sharing a passionate kiss. It was more than a simple kiss. I have no doubt that it was the type that immediately leads to physical passion. I downloaded the clip right away. After that, I picked up my phone and dialed Lee. No response. The timestamp was checked by me. An hour or so earlier, it had been recorded. The online version had just gone live. She was scheduled to attend a 4-day business conference with her advertising agency in Miami. Among those on that trip was Bart Kovat, a close friend of mine. His voice was heavy with sleep, or perhaps something else, when he heard the third ring. It's Lee Martin here, Bart. Even my name sounded strange. My name is Marty. A beat of realization filled silence. Then, too casually, hey. Marty, how are you? It's not good at all, Bart. Are you aware of Lee's current location? My voice lacked control, inflection, and was flat. He knew it was going to be a longer pause. This is nonsense, man, Marty. Hesitancy, avoidance. With the control slipping slightly, I said, cut the shit, Bart. I take it she's with Big Al. It's already widely shared on YouTube. By morning, my children might see this. Hell, the entire world has already done so. Now I need information. Has this been happening for a while, or is it new? He let out a deep, dejected sigh. All right, they hooked up on Tuesday. We went to the welcome reception after checking in when we got there. I take it she knew him in college. They clicked right away. She hardly attends meetings during the day, but lunches and dinners. She has gone missing. According to her roommate, Lee hasn't spent a single night in their room since Tuesday. I said, so she's been sleeping with him, without asking. We all think so, man. Here, it's pretty clear that they're hardly concealing it. Marty, I'm so sorry. This is a mess. Yes, I said, me too. It's an automatic word. When you wake up, will you see her? Most likely, tomorrow afternoon. She needs to catch the flight back. She typically skips breakfast, shows up for the morning wrap-up, and may already be back at the hotel, albeit in his room. Yes, I replied, feeling chilly again. Tell her not to bother returning to the house if you happen to spot her. Tell her that Al lives close by if she had any intention of doing so. She might be able to hook up with him. Tell her I know, Bart, but don't get involved if she asks why. All right, man. That will suffice. Oh no, Marty, I hung up and said, see you, Bart. Just the facts. Lee and I were practically college sweethearts. No need for condolences. It was in an advanced math class our junior year that we first met. When I first arrived, I noticed a group of geeky guys huddled in the back. Then I saw her. The sun was shining just right on her as she sat by the window and drew in a notebook. Probably 6 feet tall, with green eyes and blonde hair, not slender, but rather strong and athletic. Her face was stunning, but not in an arrogant way, it was simply stunning, and her smile had the power to make you swoon. I found the vacant seat beside her and took it. Yes, a clear move. She glanced up and gave me a quick evaluation. Well, she muttered, her tone tinged with laughter, you see, Tim, that someone was astute enough to occupy this position. I was beginning to question whether I smelled odd. I pretended to sniff as I leaned in slightly. You don't smell strange at all, however, I might need to approach a bit more closely to be certain. She gave a deep, unfiltered laugh that caught you off guard but in a good way. I guess everyone in here is a shy nerd. How about you? Under that confidence. Are you concealing your nerd badge? I said, chemist major, with a minor in not being bashful. Hey Lee Martin, I extended my hand. She shook my hand in a way that surprised me, then said, Lee Moore. Hey, I won't even need to alter the monogram on my suitcase if we ever get married. As I stared into those green eyes and tried to remain calm despite being halfway through, I said, look at that, built-in convenience. The professor then entered, which, to be honest, prevented me from making a dumb comment and wasting 5 minutes. We strolled in the direction of the student union after class. She declined my dinner invitation but agreed to tutor me after confirming that she had a permanent partner. She dictated, dinner, 4 o'clock, strictly math. The nature of those tutoring sessions soon changed, we clicked. Problems with math became the background for discussions about everything else. Even then, she was astute, humorous, and driven. Her boyfriend arrived at the diner one afternoon. Rashad was a hockey player, medium in height, perhaps 5 feet 8 inches, strong, and had a fierce gaze. As soon as we shook hands, the mood changed. We discussed majors and his physical training, with the goal of becoming a coach or teacher if pro hockey didn't work out. He exuded possessiveness. Business, she said plainly, I like the idea of making money. Life kind of wove us together. I hosted a small dinner party for Rashad, Lee, and Stephanie, who happened to be his neighbor and a stellar freshman. Yes, we were having a light-hearted affair. Lee and I teamed up and we ended up playing bridge, which became much more competitive than I had anticipated. Friends with benefits, no drama, we dominated it, and Stephanie ended up crashing at my place that night. Her bidding was all instinct and chaos, but somehow it matched my more methodical approach perfectly. A few days later, however, I saw Rashad and Stephanie crossing campus together, making their way into her dorm building. It was enjoyable, no obligations, just as it always was between us, and we both understood the agreement. It was interesting to watch them ascend in the elevator. Later, I knocked on Steph's door. Marty, not now, she replied, looking flushed and a little unkempt. Then it hit me, damn Marty, you saw. I said softly, just curious. I pointedly asked, look, he's fun, don't make it weird, it doesn't mean anything. She looked uncomfortable, and I said, yeah, probably, just don't stir crap up, okay? For Lee's sake, it was too late. Lee asked me to play in a bridge tournament that Friday, and after we unexpectedly finished third, we talked about it. Why didn't you tell me about Rashad and Steph? Lee asked in a neutral tone. After Steph informed him that you had seen them, we spoke and decided to take a moment to calm down and see how we felt. After a pause, he turned to face me and we locked eyes. It wasn't my place, he said. If you want to, Marty, I want you to take me back to your place. Of course I wanted to, and the drive back was a haze of expectation. In contrast to the relaxed physicality with Stephanie, the kiss inside my apartment was explosive, the pent-up energy finally released, the clothes disappeared, and it was elemental. We repeatedly devoured each other until we collapsed, drenched in sweat, our hearts thumping in unison, our showers and sleeps entwined. This was intense and consuming. She tilted her head and asked, am I as good as Rashad? I replied, am I as good as Stephanie? The morning brought coffee and uncomfortable realities. She smiled slowly and said, "He's bigger," before winking. "But you're better." "Steph's very good," I said, "but Lee, you're amazing." Lee practically moved in with me that day, and we were inseparable. After a brief protest, Rashad vanished and seemed to find comfort with Stephanie frequently. Big Al moved into the building's fourth floor his senior year, and he occasionally saw them together and gave them courteous nods in the hallway. Once, Steph invited us over for dessert. Al was present, and it was a nice evening, but I noticed that Al was observing Lee a bit too closely, so Steph must have realized because the invitation stopped. We were married shortly after graduation. Both of us 22. I got a good job at the Pentagon doing government programming, and Lee went to a public relations firm that specialized in corporate advertising with the goal of influencing politics in Washington, D.C. After the tenants moved out, my grandfather's handy 3-bedroom house became ours. It needed some work, so I took on the basement makeover myself with the assistance of a construction buddy from high school. Everything seemed to be falling into place until Betsy and Linda, the twins, came along and completely upended our world. Lee took a year off, so I reduced my workload, went to contract, worked from home, and made the most of my flexibility, more money, fewer benefits, and complete control over my schedule. I was doing well with my contract work, and Lee was back at work full-time by the time the girls turned 4, launching herself into her career as if she had something to prove. Lee was ideal for raising twin toddlers. On paper, everything looked picture perfect. We had 2 wonderful daughters, a nice place to live, money coming in, and a couple of systems that actually had some real commercial value. However, Lee's enthusiasm for her work didn't really translate to her home life, and our physical interactions slowed down. When it did, I was okay with it, but it seemed like she was merely following the routine. Even so, after 15 years of dating, routines develop and you become accustomed to them. You trust each other and think everything is fine, until you watch a 3-minute YouTube video that proves your wife enjoys foreplay in public with a former basketball player. Without the girls, the house felt strangely quiet on Friday morning. They had spent Thursday night at Milt and Ellen's, Lee's parents, a planned but fortunately fortuitous visit. Their phones, I vaguely recalled, had been low on battery. Milt and Ellen used old flip phones without compatible chargers, so I hadn't had time to prepare them or break the news. For a few more hours, they were offline and blissfully ignorant. My reprieve was brief, as the school called at around 8:30 a.m. "Mr. Martin, this is Principal Thompson. Betsy and Linda have been involved in an incident. This is urgent." Her voice was tight and professional, conveying nothing but seriousness. "You need to come down right away." "An incident? Are they hurt?" she said, and my blood ran cold. "They're in my office now after a little altercation. There are a few bumps and scratches, so you should come in as soon as you can." I didn't wait for a spot, and the drive to the middle school felt never-ending. My thoughts were constantly racing. What kind of fight? With whom? What even happened? The secretary gave me a firm nod and gesture to the principal's door as I pulled up directly in front of the building, got out, and walked straight into the main office. Betsy and Linda were inside, snuggled together on a small couch, Linda with a dark bruise already developing under one eye and silent tears streaming down her face. Betsy's lip burst, her jaw clenched, her fists scraped raw, her forehead a red mark, her school top torn at the shoulder, and they looked shattered, hurt, and shaken, far too small for what they'd just been through. I've always respected Principal Thompson for being fair and straightforward, and she looked at me and pointed to the chair in front of her desk. "Mr. Martin," she said quietly, "I'm afraid the girls got into a rather serious fight during morning break. What happened?" I knelt in front of my daughters and tried to get Betsy's attention, but she refused to look at me. The principal went on cautiously. "It seems some other students became aware of a video circulating online involving Mrs. Martin." My stomach fell. So much for protecting them. Principal Thompson hesitated, then sighed. "Apparently, they played the video on a phone for Betsy and Linda, along with some very offensive and cruel comments." "What kind of remarks?" I asked in a dangerously quiet voice. "And my girls fought them?" "Yes, it escalated quickly. There were several students involved," she said, gesturing to her desktop monitor. They were taunting them about their mother's behavior, calling her names, and calling you, well, using derogatory terms related to infidelity. She pressed play on the grainy security footage from the yard, which showed a group of children gathered around my daughters, pointing fingers, holding up cell phones, and laughing, motion then blurred, and I saw my fierce, protective Betsy throw herself at a taller boy, with Linda attempting to pull her back before she was shoved by another girl. Turning and swinging blindly, and then it all dissolved into a frenzied scrum with fists flying, hair pulling, and kicking. Seeing my daughters fight like that to protect what was left of our family's name, bloody knuckles, tear-streaked faces, shaking with anger, made me feel proud, and then the guilt hit me hard, raw, and real. My girls were outnumbered, taking hits, but giving it their all until teachers pulled everyone apart. The video was stopped by Principal Thompson, and this is what she left behind. I understand you were defending yourselves and your family, but fighting is never the answer, she said formally, addressing Betsy and Linda. Everyone involved in the fight will be punished. They shuffled out, heads down, and I thanked the principal before signing them out. Your father will take you home. They stared out opposite windows as we walked to the car in silence, and I drove, clutching the wheel, trying to think of something to say. I began, my voice shaky, girls, what happened at school? Those kids were wrong, cruel. Nobody has the right to say those things. How do you explain this level of adult failure to 13-year-olds who have already been roughed up by its consequences? There was silence, followed by Betsy's irate voice. Was that Mom? Was that Dad? Was that video? They had already seen the evidence and paid the price, so there was no hiding or softening of the blow. It was her, Bets, a choked sob from Linda in the back, whispering, yes, honey, with Big Al Johnson. However, why? Linda's voice broke. Doesn't she love you? How should she respond to that? Mom made a terrible decision, girls, a mature error that severely damaged our family. So you're getting divorced? Betsy asked, her voice flat and emotionless now. We need to work things out, I avoided saying, not ready to drop that bomb just yet. For now, we need to concentrate on you two being okay. She had already hardened herself and processed it more quickly. What happened today? I know why you defended her and us, but I don't understand why you did it. Is Mom going to come home? Linda asked timidly. I said carefully, we all need some space right now. She's staying with Grandma and Grandpa Moore for a little while. Linda started crying again. The rest of the drive home was a silent sob and the weight of truths too painful to bear, but Betsy stayed stiff, staring straight ahead. Lee called 10 times that Friday night. The messages were variations on a theme, frantic apologies, declarations of love, pleased to talk, Martini, pick up the phone. Every time I saw her name flash, I felt a jolt of something, anger, revulsion, a flicker of the old connection, and I let it go to voicemail. I made a mistake. I love you, Marty. Please, she broke into sobs, uttered empty words, and made meaningless gestures before saying, I'll be back this afternoon. Then came the parents, Ellen and Milt, my own mother and father, who had met briefly on the street outside and quickly formed a united front after Lee's tearful calls. My mom, Lacey, started hesitantly as we sat in the living room and decided to see what you thought. I glanced at her and then at the group of anxious faces. The devastation must have been obvious on my face as I straightened up and looked directly into my mother's eyes. I think, I said in a raspy but steady voice, that my marriage is over. Dad whispered, is there any chance? Can you talk to Lee? For what? I shot back, my resentment beginning to seep in. What could she say? She didn't just cheat. Dad, the entire world is aware that she did it in public, destroying everything, and not just for one night or 3. I know she made a mistake, Marty, a big mistake, but you have the girls. Ellen, Lee's mother, jumped in, protective, you can save this. Save what, Ellen? I shot back, turning up the volume a little. You've been in love for years. I don't think of the woman I married as my wife, and I never will. She may not have existed at all, Ellen flushed. You're hurting now. Your ego took a huge hit. She's the mother of my kids, period. My ego, I laughed, a harsh barking sound. Ellen, you have my admiration. Marriage doesn't end over a few days, even though I consider you family. Your daughter didn't make me feel bad because she blew up our lives. I stared at her until she turned away and raised her hands in surrender. Please, I said, my voice trailing off. You all need to consider what life will be like after the divorce. My mom burst into tears once more. Give it a few days, Marty. Your father and I can take the girls to the lake house for the weekend. Give you some space. I agreed that space was necessary, and the girls, who were quiet but obviously relieved to be leaving, quickly packed their belongings. They needed space as much as I did, so I told them straight out, no visits to Lee this weekend. That weekend was a haze of unfiltered emotion and legal consultations. Joan Ellis, a sharp, direct family law lawyer who may have been in her late 40s, began after the introductions. Divorce, are you sure? It's a hard road. 2 children. Yes, twins, 13, I confirmed. Indeed, custody is my top priority. Has this happened before, or is Miami a unique incident? From what I understand, it's isolated, irrelevant, and only needs to happen once. All right, she nodded. We delved into the financial and parenting details, the fact that I had owned the house prior to marriage, worked from home, and had been the primary caregiver for the children all worked to my advantage. She reminded me that nothing is ever certain, but all of the points regarding custody were sound. As for child support, it's probably not a huge deal. We made roughly the same amount, give or take. I asked, how quickly can we file? Week, maybe, to draft and file, she said, leaning forward a little. I strongly suggest waiting. People change their minds. In situations like this, courts frequently order counseling, especially when children are involved. Can we avoid that? It's unlikely that you can completely avoid it, but we can try to minimize direct interaction and carefully structure it. Counseling with her? That thought repulsed me. She stopped when she saw that my hands were still raw and bandaged from the Friday night punching bag session. Bandages? I muttered. I had a fight with a heavy bag and forgot the gloves. Good, better bag than your wife or Mr. Johnson. A sardonic glance. Speaking of, can I sue him? Joan sighed. Alienation of affection, something he needs to pay. Regretfully, no. Florida and Virginia both outlawed those heart bomb torts years ago. There is no legal recourse against the third party. He must pay, I reiterated, my voice low and icy cold even to my own ears. Until he is held accountable, I will not go to sleep. Her face grew defensive. Mr. Marty, lawyer-client conversations are confidential, no question, but I have a duty to speak up if I learn that you intend to harm someone. I cut her off smoothly, so you won't have any such knowledge. That's just the way it is. She looked at me for a long time before slowly nodding. Understood. Get me the financials, we'll get the preliminary paperwork ready. I paid the fee, signed the retainer, and left her office feeling empty but determined. My phone rang while I was driving home, but there was no caller ID, so voicemail took over. Please pick up, Marty. I need to talk to you, Lee said in a desperate tone. I know I made a mistake. Am I losing you? Please, no. I understand your anger. I'm truly sorry. I'm confused. I'm crying more than I'm clicking. Her voice, that unadulterated agony, set off my own. The dam burst once more. And I started crying as I drove. I pulled over, breathing heavily, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, and went back down to the basement as the anger returned, hot and protective. This time, I wore gloves and pounded the bag until I was exhausted, my hands aching, my lungs burning, and I was drenched in sweat. I needed information, and later that night I became too restless to sit still and went out. Seeing nothing but Big Al's face, burned into the leather with each blow, I needed to know my enemy's terrain, so I took the .380 Taurus, the untraceable one I discovered years ago while jogging, filed off the serial number, kept it handy, and slipped it into the waistband holster I'd rigged. About 3 miles north, I drove toward Big Al's neighborhood. It was a big, newly constructed house near a street with a basketball hoop in the driveway, no cars in sight, and a sizable detached garage in the back. It seemed too easy, too vulnerable. I shook my head at the idea and circled around, taking a few covert pictures with my phone to record the area, then passed Lee's parents' house. Lee's car was nowhere to be found in my garage, but Milt and Ellen's cars were there, so I continued driving. The house was quiet when we got home after stopping at a CVS, purchasing a burner phone, and buying Diet Pepsi. The communication was straightforward and untraceable if necessary. I switched on my actual phone and received 11 voicemails and about 20 texts from friends, family, and coworkers asking if I was okay and asking if I should call. Milt made the typical worried noises, but his texts caught our attention. The first was a sincere apology for Lee's alleged shortcomings as a father. The second was sent a few minutes ago. Marty, I noticed you wanted to talk earlier. Would it be possible for us to meet away from the women? It sounds interesting. I called his burner number back right away, got a voicemail, and he called me 3 minutes later. Raymond Park, half a mile from AL's house, by the hoops court. His voice sounded strained. It was an interesting choice. 30 minutes, all right. I checked the Taurus and tucked it safely back. Milt was already there, watching some kids shoot baskets from a bench by the basketball court. We sat side by side after exchanging quick, firm handshakes. I wanted to make sure you were okay, Marty, he said, turning to face the court. I'm not okay, Milt, not even close. I feel like crap warmed over. Ellen and your mom were worried, Milt went on, turning to face me, if it helps any. Lee hasn't eaten, is nearly catatonic, and has hardly spoken 3 sentences since arriving at our house. You actually look better than she does. I guess you feel guilty. We're considering getting her professional help. I paused, the next question forming. Sorry to hear that, Milt, for the twins' sake. They need their mother whatever state she's in. Why, Milt? Why did she throw everything away? Ellen can't figure it out, Marty. Perhaps it was the pressure, the absence, or the attention from the public. She simply gave in. Weak moment. This was premeditated, I sneered. This was unresolved business, and perhaps she believed she could have it both ways. She wanted Al back in college. What are you going to do? Divorce her, perhaps, he said quietly. It's impossible to see her, live with her, and know what she did. I know everyone else is telling you to wait and take your time, but look, Milt leaned forward and spoke in a deep, low voice. He gave me a shoulder pat and said, I don't see how you two ever get back from this. How any marriage could, he said. Case is lost, son, just get her ready. I'll try, Milt, but I can't guarantee it. We got up and shook hands once more. I parked a block away from my car and started to walk back, but as I got there, I noticed Big Al dribbling a basketball down the cross street toward the park courts, and my hand went to the gun in my waistband. Chaos ensued as time slowed down and Milt's car abruptly sounded its horn, a long, sharp blast. As it pulled away from the curb, Al recoiled, caught off guard, and lost control of the ball, which bounced off and rolled directly into the street. And he fled without even looking, like a child running after a toy. Milt's car, which had just sped up, partially blocked the SUV from the opposite direction, and he didn't notice it until the brakes screeched and then there was that terrible, heavy thud. Al flew up over the hood, smashed into the windshield, then flipped through the air and hit the pavement hard, landing in a twisted pile. It was vicious. With my heart racing, I ran to Al as Milt continued to drive without even slowing down. The older man who was driving the SUV staggered out, calling 911 already, talking ramblingly as if he was in shock. Al was barely conscious, his eyes open but rapidly fading. There was a moment of recognition as his eyes met mine. And he opened his mouth to speak, but all that came out was a choking, wet sound, then, nothing. I heard sirens in the distance. Paramedics arrived quickly, hurried in, and made every effort, but to no avail. Big Al Johnson was gone, and I felt something else at that moment, as if I had been robbed, as if fate had intervened and taken my moment, rather than sadness or relief. The police showed up before I could say what I needed to say or get my reckoning. I provided my statement, explained what I saw. The ball rolled out, Al ran after it. The driver didn't have time to stop, it was just a tragic accident, and they inquired about weapons. Questions, forms, the usual. I mentioned my legally owned guns, which were covered by my concealed carry permit. The Taurus, on the other hand, remained silent, tucked away in the holster, out of sight and out of earshot. It wasn't much, but I think it helped a little when I told the old man who had hit Al that it wasn't his fault and that there was nothing he could have done. He was a mess, trembling, and barely holding himself together. They let me go without any problems, and I went home, dropping the Taurus off a few miles away in a random dumpster. That was not something I was going to keep around. I drove directly to Milt's place, thinking Lee might be there, but I wasn't there for her. Milt opened the door and I waved him outside because I needed to talk to him and ask him about that horn. Once we were on the lawn, I said, "Milt." Big Al was dead, but his expression was unimpressed. "It was you? I saw you had that gun." "No." I watched him intently as he chased his ball into the street and was struck by a car immediately after you honked. I think I startled him a little because he looked away and then looked back at me. No surprise, no shock, just acceptance. "You planned that, didn't you? The horn? God works in mysterious ways, Marty," he said with a faint smile, then returned to his practical side. "I stopped you or Ellen from telling Lee that her boyfriend had died." Boyfriend? He wasn't. I admitted that I felt cheated when he passed away, as if he had gotten away with it. What did it matter? "I suppose it will be news soon anyhow," Milt said, his voice dropping again, earnestly. Then, "I don't know, relief maybe, that it's over." "Marty, I want to save my daughter. She's going to the abyss. I want her to have a life, so please don't interfere if you can. Perhaps later, you could help. I know she made a royal mistake, but she's my blood. I understand that this is a challenging request." "Milt, I need time to think." "Okay," he nodded, then twisted his lips wryly. I got in my car and drove away, the weight of the day bearing down on me. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was quiet but tense. "Well done, son, on leaving without being charged." Lee sat at the petitioner's table with her lawyer, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes low, just the judge, a clerk, a bailiff, and the chilly formal rhythm of family law. Our case, Martin versus Martin, the final hearing for a fault-based divorce, was called by the clerk. Judge Hughes, a clean-cut man in his mid-50s, looked through the file and then looked up the divorce action based on adultery. Joan, my lawyer, stood. "Yes, Your Honor, we have video evidence of the respondent having an extramarital affair while on a business trip." Lee's lawyer stood. "Ms. Ellis, you're claiming fault?" Judge Hughes nodded. "The respondent understands she forfeits spousal support under Section 20. 107.1 due to fault-based findings. We're not contesting the divorce or custody arrangement, Your Honor," Joan calmly responded. "Any contested assets or community property?" "No, Your Honor. The marital home was bought by my client before the marriage using non-marital funds, and it was still titled exclusively in his name." The judge tapped her pen twice, and there was no question. "Custody?" Joan handed over the schedule. "The respondent will have supervised visitation every other weekend until further review. We are proposing primary custody to Mr. Martin, who is already the primary caregiver for the children while working remotely." Lee cleared her throat and said, "Yes, Your Honor." As the judge turned to face her. "Ms. Martin, do you understand and accept these terms?" With 2 quick strokes of her pen, the judge signed the papers, stating that the divorce was granted on the grounds of adultery, that custody and visitation were as specified, that no spousal support was granted, and that the case was closed. No tears or pleading were required. Joan whispered, "That's everything, you're out clean." Without even looking up, I nodded once, but it was only the icy click of a door shutting permanently, neither relief nor collapse.